Have you heard the words the COVID 15? Now, that's a very interesting phrase. And what it's referring to is the 15 pounds that all of us are going to gain while we're in self isolation and lockdown. And it's because places like gyms where we work out are closed, and essential businesses like bakeries are open. Love my bakery. Every time I go in there, I get these little bonus donut holes. But I'm a sucker for apple fritters. This stuff is good. Now, despite what you see me doing right now, when I heard that, I said, not me. I'm not gaining the COVID 15. And so I set it my goal. I was going to get down to into the 170s. The closest I got was 180.0. Now you're looking at my apple fritter and you're thinking, well, Dave, that's not going to happen. If you eat apple fritters, you are not going to get down to the 170s. And you're right. If I'm going to set my target, if I'm going to have a goal, then my lifestyle actually has to align with that, or I'm never going to get there. Once I took my son to his physical therapist and we began talking about muscles, he was a bodybuilder, and I said, do you think a guy my age could actually have abs? He says, oh, you have abs. They're covered with fat. And we went on to talk about it becomes about eating habits and exercising properly. If there's a goal, we've got to orient our life to that. And when we think about the Christian life, I think so many times Christians long to put to death certain sins. They long to live in a certain way. They long to maintain the kind of priorities that are reflective of being a Christian. But oftentimes we lose our aim, we lose our focus. Jesus told the disciples to think about eternity. In John 14, he says, hey, don't be troubled. I want you to know I'm going to prepare a place for you, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to take you to myself. Jesus is preparing a place for us. But in light of that, the Bible also says, not only is Jesus preparing a place for us, but we should be preparing ourselves for that place. And we've got to be thinking about that eternity. This is so important that C.S. Lewis said this: it is since Christians have largely ceased to think of the other world that they've become so ineffective in this world. Aim at heaven, you'll get earth thrown in. Aim at earth, you get neither. Now, some might say, well, don't become so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. Well, I don't think that is going to be a problem. In fact, John Piper has a lot to say about that, but his concluding statement was, I suspect that for every professing believer who is useless in this world because of other worldliness, there are 100 who are useless because of this worldliness. When we look at the Bible's teaching on what kind of perspective are we to have, as I think about eternal mindedness, Jesus is preparing us a place and we are to be preparing ourselves for that place. 3 words come to mind: perspective, purity, and urgency. Perspective is that which causes us to think about that place. Jesus says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Jesus says, you focus on soul things, not on these world things. You need to take up your cross and follow me. Paul put it this way: if we've been raised with Christ, this is in Colossians 3, seek those things are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. For you've died, your life is already hidden there. Live in that way. Make that your aim. Let your life line up with that. Have that kind of perspective. And we could include a lot of different passages that talk about that future day. Perspective. But secondly, purity. The fact that Jesus is going to come back ought to be stirring in us a desire to maintain purity in our lives. And we could look at passages like, put to death the deeds of the flesh, put on Christ, clothe yourself in love, walk in the Spirit, don't walk in the flesh. But I love what it says in Hebrews 10, 23 to 25. Here, the author of Hebrews is giving a number of exhortations. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope, for he whose promise is faithful. Let us consider how to stir one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some is, but encouraging one another. Now notice this: and all the more as you see the day drawing near. There's a purity as we see that day coming. Live your lives in a certain way. Perspective, purity and urgency. The fact that Jesus could return at any moment causes us to live as if he is going to return in the next moment. Jesus put it this way: concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven or the Son, but only the Father. Be on your guard. Keep awake. That's the word right there. For you do not know when the time will come. It's like a man going on a journey. So he talks about a master who goes on a journey, leaves his people in charge to make sure everything functions. Then he's going to come back. And you want to make sure that you're awake, that you're active, that you're doing what he asked you to do on his return. And Jesus says, therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house, referring to himself, will come, in the evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. So our master's gone to prepare a place for us, and he wants us to have that kind of urgency, a perspective. We live for a future day. We don't live of this world. A purity. We are preparing ourselves. We're purifying ourselves. And then an urgency. We know he's coming back, and we want to be ready. And so if I don't want to gain the COVID-19, I'm going to get rid of apple fritters. If I want to live for the things that matter to Jesus, then I'm going to be the kind of person who gives that focus to that and orients my life around it. May God help you do that on this day.